They provide documents that they say, because of national security, in quotes, can't be released. And the judge signs an order, rubber stamp, okay, throw her out. The next phase under this proceeding is that she is to be deported to a country that will take her that is acceptable to the United States State Department. Now, the trick here is that that's a double-barreled test that only the government controls. If they can't find anybody acceptable to the government who will take her, guess what happens? She stays in jail. Guess how long? Forever. That's right, forever. All the government has to do at that point under this bill is to send her a notice every 6 months saying, sorry, Charlie, we haven't found a country acceptable to the State Department that will take you. This ranks as the most reprehensible piece of legislation I have ever seen. Now, the catch is that when the Nazis passed stuff like this, they conducted polls, because generally even totalitarians would prefer not to provoke a revolution. So the key issue now is, and I realize sometimes people say writing to Congress does no good, but this time it's going to count. The key issue now is, can we generate enough public opinion, enough public perception to stop this juggernaut, to scare the politicians, to make them realize that this is not the moment to wrap up the Constitution and burn up the Bill of Rights.
There will be an all-out assault upon your liberties, but you have to surrender your liberty for security, or the promise of security, by the same people who are perpetrating the crime. You think, well, how could this be? Why would they do that? Because they want a new world order. Hitler talked about a new world order. But Bush is no Hitler. He doesn't have the capacity to speak, to dramatize the situation, to emotionalize the people. But people believed in Hitler. People believe in Bush. People want to have security. American people are being told by the managed media that we're willing to surrender our liberty for security, that we're willing to take the mark, we're willing to take the ID card, we're willing to take that giant step towards fascism. Illuminati, IllumiNAZI. It's a national socialistic program. But will you buy into it?
We have to make it abundantly clear to these turkeys that we will not stand for this, that we are not buying this game, that we are not good Germans, and that we demand our rights.
It's a war for control, the control of your mind and your body. Americans are traditionally independent, very hard to control, but the architects of the New World Order have ways to force you into submission. First, through a well-orchestrated agenda including health care, financial security, safety from crime, and environmental issues, the public will be coerced into accepting a national identification card. It will be disguised in the cloak of benevolence, the government doing a great good deed for the people. Once the national identification card is in place, it will become the ID card. Without it, you'll not be able to make deposits or withdrawals at the bank, write a check at the supermarket, or even drive your automobile. Soon thereafter, legislation will require all citizens to carry their national ID card at all times.
I think once you have a system where the government has to establish your identity by issuing an ID card, we have lost the initiative as a people.
In my humble opinion, I think we need to start looking at the Bush family and this entire monstrosity of murdering people in this country in order to frighten the country into accepting a new order in the world. We're Americans. I am absolutely appalled at how much people in this country do not think We are given to understand that an Arabic guy out there living in a tent out in Pakistan up in the mountains financed the most elaborate attack on this country when it's absolutely ludicrous.
We read in the papers that Bush is asking the Taliban in Afghanistan to surrender bin Laden. But the Taliban is asking, give us some evidence that he's responsible for these bombings.
There's been an explosion deep below the 110-story towers of the World Trade Center in New York City.
That he's responsible for the crash of the airliners into the World Trade Center.
The number one suspect, this man, Osama bin Laden.
Evidence? I mean, come on. Let's get real. No evidence, no trial. There's a conviction. And he's willing to send our troops into Afghanistan to mass murder, maim, and mutilate those people. Do they hate the United States? I would think that they should. Because the United States was financing the Russians at the same time the Afghans were laying down their lives for their freedom. Oh, we were financing both sides. The Mujahideen was financed by you, the American taxpayer. We were furnishing them in the war against the Soviets. We financed both sides. You say, well, why is that? Because we want to control the outcome. They lifted the ban that was imposed by Jimmy Carter on the Soviet Union because they were slaughtering all of these Afghanis. But when President Reagan, old Red Ronnie, Mr. 666 himself, who was so far left he made Fidel Castro look like a member of the Birch Society. Oh, that's not the image that you got him? I used to call him Red Ronnie in college. But he lifted the ban. Soviets, allowing trade and aid to the Soviets, the communists, while they were slaughtering off the Afghans. And the Afghans thought, well, this is wonderful. The United States is coming to our aid. And who was some of the chief asset? Osama bin Laden. Can you believe that? Do you think that Bush and the boys were in bed with Osama bin Laden? I mean, business-wise. Do you think that Senior Bush was in bed with Saddam Hussein in the oil business? Oh, you might start thinking about that.
Bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, George Bush Sr. were all in business together. We're talking about business partners in oil companies. You know what we're talking about here? We're talking about big money. We're talking about high treason, crimes against the state, high treason against America, high treason. We're talking about the George Bush, bin Laden, Saddam Hussein. These men are all in business together. I'm just amazed at the treason that is going on in this country, and Americans haven't got the faintest idea in the world how to read the symbols and what the words mean. But I'm going to guarantee you something. There's going to come a day in this country very soon when we're going to wake up and find out that, well, all these people used to tell us, and they used to tell me all the time, oh, it could never happen in America. Yes, it happened in Germany, and unfortunately, yeah, there were a lot of Jews that were killed in the Holocaust, but it'll never happen in America. It's already happened in America. They just haven't told you yet.
We know one thing, that the Afghan war resulted in a continuation of the dope trafficking, heroin, out of Afghanistan. For certain, the Central Intelligence Agency, which was once headed by George Bush Sr., was trafficking in heroin to finance their operations. They were trafficking in heroin out of Southeast Asia. When General Khun Sa in Shanland, which is in the heart of the Golden Triangle, was dealing with the Central Intelligence Agency, Khun Sa was asked who was the number one trafficker of heroin into the Western world. Who's the number one man? And they said Richard Armitage, CIA operative. Oh, Armitage. He was made Assistant Secretary of Defense under Ronald Reagan, personally appointed.